Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make an important life decision but weren't sure what to do? You were hoping that someone would tell you exactly what you need to do because you were afraid of making the wrong decision? What if the reason you feel stuck isn't because you don't know what to do, but it's because you've stopped trusting yourself? Welcome to the Journey Back Home podcast. I'm Isa Qureshi. This is the place where we reconnect with ourselves, unlearn who we were taught to be, and create a life that feels like our own. Let's begin. Today, I want to explore a question that so many of us have. How do I know what I actually want? How do I begin trusting myself again? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make an important decision? Whether that was choosing the right career, what job offer to accept, or finding the right partner for yourself, and you didn't know what the right decision was. So you looked for answers elsewhere. You asked friends or family members, you watched videos, you read books, hoping that somewhere you would find the right answer. But the problem isn't that you don't know what the right answer is. The problem is you don't trust what you know. So many of us are seeking answers outside of ourselves because we don't trust that we are able to make important life decisions. And when it comes to it, it's often the small decisions we feel comfortable making ourselves, whether it's choosing what to eat or which clothes to buy. We find ourselves quite confident and capable of making those decisions ourselves. When it comes to major life decisions, when it comes to decisions that's going to impact our life and potentially our future, whether that's choosing the right career path or the right partner or where to move or what house to buy, we often outsource those answers and those decisions, which, come to think of it, sounds a bit ridiculous, given the fact that you are the one who's going to live with those decisions, whatever you end up choosing, and not anyone else who you end up asking. How can you trust others to know what's best for you? And that's something that I've been thinking about for a long time. Because whenever it comes to making decisions, I've been terrible at them. And this is something that as I'm getting older, I'm learning to trust myself about it. It started very early, from even picking what birthday gift I wanted, what toy I wanted to choose. I remember once on one of my birthdays, my parents just said, "We will take you to toy store and you can pick whatever you want to buy for your birthday." Now, that's like a dream come true for any kid. I mean, that is heaven. You send them to a large toy store where they have an array of toys and things they can select from, and they can pick anything as their birthday gift. For me, it was a nightmare. My parents left me at Toys R Us, and by left me, I meant they were around, but they left me to make that decision on my own. And I spent hours, I'm not kidding you, hours searching for the right toy. And everything I looked at, the other one seemed much better. I was so unsure. I ended up selecting 3 different things I thought I needed or would be a good decision. And almost by the end of the day, my parents came back and said, "So what have you decided?" And I still didn't know what I wanted. I remember one of them was, I think, a chemistry set, a Barbie doll, or some other, I don't know, it was some kitchen set or something like that. And I couldn't pick which one to choose. So do you know what happened? My parents bought me neither of them. Instead, they picked the gift themselves. And it was a board game that I never played with. And I still remember that. I mean, I could have chosen anything I wanted, and I was so confused. And at the end of the day, I just let my parents decide for me. And they ended up picking something which they thought was a good gift, and I didn't like it. But I had to stay with it because I had a choice and I didn't make it. That stays with me for some reason because when it comes to decision making, some of us have learned not to trust ourselves for whatever reason that may be. Because maybe in the past we made some decisions which ended up being bad, which had negative consequences, or decisions we made that we felt were right, but others told us that they were terrible decisions. So we ended up losing self trust, and we preferred that everyone else knew what was best for us rather than ourselves. And so when it comes to decision making, it's not that you don't know what is the right thing for you. It feels like you don't know it, but you do. But the problem is that we've been so disconnected from ourselves, especially if you've spent your life following a script, following the traditional path that was laid before you, what your parents, what your family, what your culture, society dictated or chose for you. You wouldn't know what is the right decision if you literally hit you in the face because you no longer feel connected to yourself. So if you feel stuck, confused, or unsure of what direction to take, you might be asking yourself, how do I know what I want? Many people spend years of their life focused on others, their needs, their wants, what will make everyone else happy, what will make my parents happy. And so we end up choosing careers that feel safe and like the right choice. We end up being in relationships that check all the boxes but leave us feeling unfulfilled. We end up making decisions that seem like the right thing, that seem practical, but not exactly what we really want. And the reason is because we've been focused so much on outside of us. We've been making decisions based on approval, based on external validation and permission, that we've forgotten what we truly want, what we truly need, and what matters to us. We've become disconnected from ourselves. So it's hard to know what do you really want when you never stopped and questioned yourself, when you never sat with yourself to actually figure out what is it that I actually want or need. If you spend most of your life constantly listening to others, it's very hard to listen to yourself. Some questions to reflect on could be, what do I want? What feels true to me? And if no one else's opinions mattered, what would I choose? So even if you do ask yourself, what do I want? What matters to me? Or what feels true to me? There's still the challenge of not knowing whether the answer is coming from fear, intuition, or conditioning. Most people think that there are usually two voices. It's either the voice of fear or the voice of intuition. But I think there's also a third, conditioning. But how do we tell apart if it's our fear that's answering, our intuition, or are we answering from our conditioning? Conditioning is usually external that we have inherited. Those could be opinions, rules, or beliefs that we inherited from our parents, from our family members, from our school, from our society, or from culture. Those are some of those beliefs which sound often louder than our own voice because we've been conditioned, we've been programmed to believe those things as our reality for such a long time. And usually they stem from early childhood. Those could be anything like play it safe or don't talk loudly or money is evil. Any of those things that you have taken on and inherited, which become your own set of beliefs growing up, and you carry them into adulthood. Sometimes what we think as intuition is actually our conditioning. Those are usually the should or shouldn'ts of life, or do's or don'ts. There are small things that we have inherited in our childhood, which we've heard from school, from our homes, and from our culture and society that we take on as our own belief systems. But they're not really our beliefs, they have been inherited. The second voice is fear. What is the difference between fear and intuition? When it comes to fear, the voice of fear is usually more negative compared to intuition. It often tells us things like, what if I fail? What if no one likes me? What if everyone judges me or thinks I'm stupid? What if I make a mistake? Fear is always constrictive. It feels restrictive. It feels like a sense of tightening or suffocation. Fear is often loud. It screams, whereas intuition is quiet. And it has a certain sense of urgency that if I don't act now, then something bad will happen. If I don't buy this discounted course right now, then I'm going to miss out and I won't be as successful as other people who do buy the thing. If I don't say yes to this marriage proposal, then I'll be single forever. Fear always is this voice of doubt, of negativity, of criticism. It instills, it takes away hope. It says things like, what if I fail? What if I regret this? What if I make the wrong decision? What if people will judge me? What if I embarrass myself? Intuition, on the other hand, comes from a lot more calmer, more grounded place. It's quieter, it's subtle. It doesn't feel constrictive, it feels expansive. It feels easy. It's not catastrophic like fear. It's a lot more simple. It's more persistent, not urgent. It's things like, this doesn't feel right. I think I need to leave. I need to rest. I need to speak up. This doesn't feel okay. This relationship has kind of run its course. Intuition often whispers. It's the quiet inner knowing, which is nudging at you, which is guiding you towards the right path. It was February 2022, and I was working from home. I was a researcher at the time, and I was sitting at my desk when an email notification came through. And the email said that my PhD application had been accepted. My project would commence in a few weeks. Now, this was everything I had been working towards. For 7 years, I've been working as a researcher. I'd worked in the areas of eating disorders, mental health, chronic disease. And I was really passionate about the field I was in at the time. And this was the perfect opportunity. It was a fully funded PhD program. I didn't have to leave my job. And it was the opportunity to work with one of the leading experts in the field. It checked all the boxes. And when I saw that email, I thought, I should be happy. I should be excited. I should be celebrating because this is everything I have been working towards. This is what I wanted. I get to do my own project, and this would take my career to the next level. Instead of celebrating and being excited and probably jumping up and down, I just sat there, completely numb, just staring at the screen. Why wasn't I happy? I should have been more grateful. Why wasn't I? And that thought terrified me. Because if everything I had been working towards didn't make me happy, then what was I chasing all this time? What was I working towards? And what does success or happiness even look like? And that made me pause. And for the first time, I asked myself, what do I actually want? What matters to me? What feels true to me? Because till this point, I had believed that climbing up the ladder Moving up in your career was success. And PhD seemed like the perfect option and opportunity to move up as a researcher. It would open up so many opportunities for me. And it seemed like the right thing to do because everyone else around me was doing it. So I jumped on it as well. But there was something inside of me that told me that this doesn't feel right. And over the next few months, things got worse. I was chronically burnt out. I had migraines, insomnia, depression. I couldn't get out of the bed. Every single morning when the alarm would ring, I was filled with dread. And it felt like I was pinned to the bed, even though my workstation was literally 2 steps away. And even when I would summon up the courage to get out of bed and sit at my desk, I would just stare at the screen for hours. And slowly, over the next few weeks, everything started to fall apart, beginning with my mental and physical health. It impacted my work, it impacted my relationships, my social life. I was completely isolated, and I didn't want to engage in anything. It felt like I had lost all hope. And that's when I was faced to ask myself the question, why am I feeling this way? Because everything seems to be going right. Everything looked great on paper. I was living what people would call a pretty good, successful life. A well-paying job, a good career, social life, stability, everything that would make someone happy. But I was feeling miserable inside. There was this dissonance between how I was feeling versus how things were looking on the outside. And when I paused and asked myself those questions, I realized that I was not living my own life. I was following a script. I was doing what I thought was the right thing to do, what was the safe option. And I thought that would lead to happiness. But the further up I went, the more I achieved, the more I got, the more miserable and more unhappy I became. Because I was not listening to my own voice. I wasn't listening to what I truly wanted. I was so disconnected that I was blindly following the path that was laid in front of me, that I thought would lead to success and happiness, as it did for so many others. And the worse I felt, the more I realized how not following your own truth can cost you. It took me around 2 years to recover from that burnout. It was that bad. It wasn't because I was just doing too much of the work. It was because I was doing too little of what my soul craved. And that realization changed everything for me. I decided to withdraw my PhD application, leave my job and research career, and I went on a path of self-discovery, of finding what worked best for me, what I wanted to do. And I started following my intuition, that inner knowing that was always telling me this wasn't it, that I'm meant for more, that there's more to this. And I got to do all of those things that I had been putting off, which I thought were too risky or too out there for me. And when I started listening to that inner voice of what do I want? What feels true to me? What matters most to me? And I stopped listening to everyone else that told me, you're crazy. You're making a big mistake. You're throwing away everything for what? I had to shut down all those voices and only listen to the voice from within. And that is what led me to more contentment, more fulfillment, and joy that I never felt before in my life. Because I finally stopped listening to the voices outside of me and started listening to my inner voice. Now, you might be wondering, what if I genuinely don't know what I want? How do I know what I want? Well, here's what I would say to this. You don't need to know your entire future. You don't need to have 100% surety of what you're going to do. You don't need to know all the answers. You don't need to figure out your future or what the next 10 years of your life will look like. All you need to know is what is the next aligned step. What is the next best step for you? I don't know what my life will look like. I haven't figured my life out. And that used to terrify me. The uncertainty, the not knowing where you're headed when everyone seems to be on a path, doing their thing, they're moving up the ladder, they're making progress in your life, and you seem to be sitting there having no idea what you're doing and where your life is going. That is terrifying. But uncertainty doesn't mean that you're lost or you're stuck or you're a failure. Clarity doesn't come from waiting for the answers, for waiting for permission, for readiness, for more knowledge, for more information. Clarity comes from action. And as long as you keep moving forward, you'll always have an answer. And you don't need to know everything before you take action. You just need to know the first step. As the saying goes, you don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to see that first step and take that first step. And the next one will appear, followed by the next one. And if you don't know what you really want, it's normal to feel like that, because if you've been disconnected from yourself all these years, you probably aren't even familiar with your inner voice anymore. What I found really helpful and starting to reconnect with myself, things that have worked for me, is spending more time in solitude. Whether that is meditation, whether that is spending time in nature, but that could look like journaling, just spending time by yourself in complete silence without your devices. You need to step away from all of those digital distractions, your phone, your tablet, your earphones, no listening to music or podcasts or anything else, no scrolling social media or asking ChatGPT, what do I want? I know we've done that. You need to ask yourself. ChatGPT may know the answers to so many things, but it doesn't know you. You know you. And the only way you can know yourself is by spending more time with yourself. And only when you start spending time with yourself and sitting in solitude and complete silence and taking a deep breath and starting noticing how you're feeling in your body, what sensations come up, how does it feel, what are you feeling right now? Do you feel restrictive? Do you feel expansive? Do you feel afraid? Do you feel like you're avoiding something? Is there any discomfort? Once you start listening to those voices, you'll start having more and more clarity. A lot of the times, people wait for certainty. They wait for a guarantee before they can make the next decision. But like I said before, that clarity comes from action. Once you reconnect with yourself and start living more in alignment with who you truly are, that doesn't guarantee certainty. It doesn't mean that you'll know 100% what exactly you need to do. But trust isn't built with certainty. Trust is built with action. Trust is built with knowing that you have your own back. It's making decisions which feel right and then backing yourself with it. Even if everyone else says this is not the best choice for you, but you feel in your heart that this is something you should do, you make that decision and you stick with it. That is how you build self-trust. And even if it is the wrong decision, you learn something. You don't need to have the right answer. You don't need to have 100% certainty, because this is what keeps a lot of people stuck. This is one of the best pieces of advice my mom gave me. And she said, just because something is right doesn't mean it's right for you. Because things can look perfect on paper, they can check all the boxes, but it doesn't mean that it is the right decision for you, for that phase of life you're in. When I was buying my first car, this was a big decision for me. It was one of the most expensive decisions for me as well, because that was the biggest amount of money I had spent in my entire life. And it was a huge chunk of my savings. And I was terrified. When I went to the dealer to look at cars, there was one car which fit my budget. It was in a good condition. It seemed like the right choice. Everyone was making good points about the car, and it seemed like a no-brainer decision. But when I came back home, I hadn't yet made the decision, and I sat with it. I could hear everyone else's voices who said, it's a really good price, it's in a good condition, it meets all the requirements, it fits your budget, it is a safe choice. It's a reliable and safe choice, so you should go with it. But there was something inside of me which felt off. And I remember that night was one of the longest nights for me because I didn't sleep a second. I was nauseous, I had migraines, and I was so stressful about this decision I was about to make. And I wanted to know the right answer. I asked everyone. I asked my family. I did a lot of research. I asked other people I knew. And everyone's told me it was a good decision, but it didn't feel right. And the next day, I went back to the dealership and I saw another car there. And the minute I sat into it, it felt, it's hard to describe, but it felt so peaceful. And I had this really expansive feeling of, this is it. It's hard to describe or put into words, but the moment I sat in the car, and I hadn't done any much research on that car, but the moment I sat into it, I knew this was it. It just felt right. And even though it was way over my budget, it wasn't exactly what I was after, it was exactly what I needed. And that became one of the best decisions I made. And all because I trusted my intuition. I trusted my gut. And my gut guided me towards the right decision. You don't need to look outside for the answers. You already have the answers within you. You already know what the right thing is. You just don't trust yourself yet. So how do you start building self-trust? It starts in small moments. Keeping promises to yourself, setting boundaries, saying no when you want to, sitting with the discomfort of disappointing someone, sitting with the discomfort of uncertainty, of the unknown, trusting the decision that you're making is coming from a place of truth and inner knowing rather than external noise, fear, or conditioning. Self-trust isn't found, it's built. And it's built to tiny moments, to small actions that you take that align with who you are. It's by honoring your truth. When you want to break, when you want to change careers, or when you want to end a relationship, or when you want to have that difficult conversation, by honoring those things, by keeping promises to yourself, you start building self-trust. You start reconnecting with that inner knowing, with that intuition. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need complete certainty. You don't need to have all the answers, and you don't need permission. Maybe the goal isn't finding yourself. Maybe it's listening to yourself. Because beneath all that fear, the noise, the expectations, and the conditioning is a voice that has been there all along. And perhaps learning to trust yourself is learning how to hear that voice again. Thank you for being here. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Subscribe to stay connected, and I'll see you in the next episode.